editor, and we just all talked about sports all the time. So,
Awesome.
Oh, just joining us now is noted columnist of Slow City and manager of Cops Records, Will McGuirk, local legend, personality.
Nice intro. So.
Hello, how are you?
Hello.
And you are?
I'm Kara.
Kara, nice to meet you, Kara.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
So I was just gonna ask both of you, because you both have experience in like the office. How does conceptualizing an article and then publishing it from start to finish? How does that work?
Listen, I don't know anything about that side of it. To me, it comes in things called galleys, whole pieces of paper, and then you stick them all together, and then it gets sent off to a printer, and then it becomes a newspaper. The actual, I mean, it's a lot of like what you're talking about is a lot of the work that like Bruce does. As an editor, a managing editor and all that is the full-on management of the stories. My thing is that, like as a writer, just as a beat writer and a journalist, is I wait for the stories to come to me. And that doesn't mean that I'm sitting at home waiting for some publicist to call me up and stuff. Is I'm out in my own life, constantly scanning and seeing the stories that come to me. Again, like I said earlier, I work in a record shop, so people come into me, bands come into me, and they'll say to me, like the Anti-Queens came in, Toronto Oshawa band, and they gave me a copy of their new record, right, on vinyl, and they were like, Willie, this is for you. And I'm like, oh, that's amazing. They're like, the record comes out in a week, so we would like you to write something about it. But also, it's just a gift. And I was like, sure, great, awesome, as a journalist, you can take it, just let's get that out there. But all of a sudden I have a story in an interview, so then I just sent out a message to them, and I was like, let's have a conversation, let's do some stuff, and I've got this story now about the Anti-Queens. So to me, that's kind of like where it comes from, the organization of that story, the publishing of that story, what it eventually looks like in the paper, if I was sending it on to Bruce, and obviously when we say paper, we mean online now. That's the stuff then that Bruce would be able to tell you, because I would just give him this information, researched, this is the band, this is the names of them, this is the record, this is when it came out, here's a couple of quotes about what they say the album was about, here's my opinion of it based on having listened to a lot of other records by the Anti-Queens plus other records. And then I give a story, and then I follow it over to him, and then from that point, then it goes wherever Bruce chooses it. He can kill it, he can spike it, and then not get published because he's like, no, nobody's interested in this, or it's not well written, or whatever.
And we have, because of the staffing levels now, we have several different ways we approach stories. Our reporters are asked to write 4 or 5 what we call enterprise stories and impact stories. So, one item a reporter is working on now is the Oshawa Harbor. They send out a release that said, we're now partnering with a port authority in the States, and they're going to ship directly across Lake Ontario to Oshawa to avoid driving all the steel beams from here all the way around the Golden Horseshoe to Oshawa, because they're thinking they'll be able, they have a business plan that says they're going to save money. So Tim is going to look into that and do Tim Kelly, our Oshawa reporter, so he's going to look into that and do a bigger story on this announcement. When the announcement came out, it was in a one-page press release that listed, here's what we're doing, blah, 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 blah. We consider that, when we get sent to us, that's a low-lift story for us, so Tim could have went and spent 10 minutes, took all that information, put it in a story of about 300 to 400 words, and filed it, and just didn't do anything more on it. But because it has the ability to be of more interest to people, he's going to flesh that out with quotes and a longer story and make it more readable for people, and more how it's going to impact them and what it means to their city and that sort of stuff.
Awesome. So I know the two of you were talking about quotes in your workshop. So what does make like a good quote? Like the audience is going to read this, it's eye-catching. What makes a good quote?
It has to have a strong verb. Like, you need something with punch in a quote, and the key too is the quote has to amplify the story. It can't. You can't run. You can't take a quote that is basically the paragraph before. Like, the quote has to elevate the information. Can't just be you can't regurgitate the quote in more text. Like I said, when the guy said, "I put on this damn jersey and we just can't score," that tells the whole story right there. If anybody was a Canadian soccer fan, they'd know exactly what he was talking about. But if you weren't, you'd be like, "What is he? Why is he saying that?" And then you give them that information.
I think there's probably some way of measuring it, some formula to it. But I think it's that whatever, like if you can monitor yourself while you're reading the stuff and listening to the information, and monitoring your own reaction to stuff, and if somebody says something, you've trained yourself, to be able to and you're like, okay,
that's
why
good,
did that?
right?
That's good. Why? Like you'll know yourself what's a good quote because it's of interest to you, and if it's punchy and funny and or controversial or whatever like that, you can place that anywhere you like in the story. Again, if you're chasing hits or interests and stuff like that, but you can't just randomly just grab something that doesn't have anything to do with the story itself either. So once you've figured out what the story is, and then you have your record of all the notes, and you go, oh, this is really important. I'm going to copy this part right now when he's talking about this. That's great. If you're interviewing, I'll interview a lot of bands, and he's interviewing a band, and he says something about the album. I'm like, okay, that's cool. And he goes, yeah, but like it took me I wrote this song in like 2 seconds. I'm like, oh my god, that's amazing. It's not what anybody wants to hear because everybody hates people who write songs in 2 seconds and makes $1 million, right? But it's a quote because it's about something. If he starts talking about what his grandmother was doing, in and of itself, it all depends on what his grandmother was doing. That's a whole different story that you can just veer the interview that way and say, okay, tell me about your grandmother. Where did this come from? Like, and so by monitoring what you're doing and being open to it all, and kind of allowing yourself to go with the stories, though you'll monitor the quotes as well at the same time, because you're kind of filtering them, and that's the way it is. So there's no real sort of thing that you can say, like, obviously Bruce has been doing this professionally, so there are certain things that he knows once he gets a story from somebody else, because as an editor, again, he's not there at the beginning of it. He doesn't have those reactions. He's hoping that the journalist has given him enough information that he can go, oh, this is a good quote, because he's monitoring his own reaction to it, but also what works, in his field. So there are a few different sort of sides to it.
And that's why the discussions between people in our newsroom is important. Someone will see something in a story and say, have you thought about this? Did you know that this happened before? And that context is important to stories. And having someone take a look at your story and your content is really key. Because, as you're saying, they can see something that maybe you didn't see.
Yeah, it's. I was talking to one of the other students, and it was kind of interesting because there is a difference between the creative writing and journalism as such. Writing to present information in an informative, interesting way. So when I have been writing for a long time, probably about maybe 30 years or so, and I had an opportunity to go back and get my journalism degree, so I went back up to Durham College, and randomly I knew most of the professors, just because I'm in the industry and I'd worked with some of them. Is it Rob Paxton? He was one, right? So one of my professors was Rob Paxton, and again, well known in his field. And I stepped into his classroom, and he's like, he goes, well, nice to meet you. He goes, like, I've been reading your stuff forever. He goes, like, I love reading your columns every week. It's amazing. It's so informative. It's great. He goes, but I am now going to take everything that you do and flip it upside down because you're doing it all wrong. Right? Because I had been a creative writer, presenting information in a storytelling way, right? Not in a journalist way. And that was what I spent 2 years learning. And there is a skill to it. There's a formula to it. There are tools to it, and that's how you do it. And if you pay attention to it, then things like hopes and stories and interest and where you think a story can be broadened. Some stories are so good that you hear about that they become actual books. It might become like you might have like a little video that you're doing something on, but you have such an interest in it that you make a 2-hour documentary out of it. Because there's just so much more information that keeps coming. As you chase the story, you just find more and more and more of it, and you want to document it all. And the point of that being is that, like, is it that Bernstein is like the journalist gets to as close to the truth as possible at that time. It's not the truth. It's just the journey to the truth.
So, having been to starting your career off without a degree in journalism and then getting a degree, do you think that you should have waited, or do you think you should have gotten your degree right off starting your career?
I don't know. I had a lot of,
It doesn't matter?
yeah, I mean, I had a lot of fun writing some stuff. I like the freedom of it. I don't know if anybody back then, I'm a bit of a punk rocker. I don't think if anybody would have told me how to do something, I would have done it anyway. I think I would have just ended up annoying a lot of people in the newsroom.
I don't know if either of you have, but have you ever gotten a story that you weren't that interested in reporting on, and then you had to how do you work around that situation?
You put on your big boy pants, and you just do it. And often what happens is it becomes this a straightforward story, and a real journalist will pump out an incredible story. I worked with a guy for a very long time named Jeff Mitchell, who was the best writer I've ever been around, and he had to work one weekend, and he had to go to the Santa Claus parade. Now, he had worked in journalism for 20 plus years, and he was like, first of all, why am I working a Saturday? And second of all, why are you sending me to the Santa Claus parade? Everybody knows what the Santa Claus parade is about. It's going to be things going by and whatever. And he came back and had the greatest Santa Claus parade story ever, even though he was stomping his feet and saying he didn't want to go. But he just was like, this is what they want, I'm going to give them the best I got.
It's still a job. At the end of the day, it's still work. And if you get an assignment, you get an assignment. And you don't have to take it. And in that case, you can go find somebody else to work for. But if you've been assigned something, then that's what it is. Go make that story. But you're given the tools, and you've given the experience, right? And you have the knowledge that you should be able to apply that to any story, whatever it is. It's on you as a writer to make it interesting, but you can outline all the facts around it. If it's just flower festival or something that's happening, you can just get the fact that it can be 200 words. This is the information that you need to know, right? Or dude may be interested in flowers, so he's like the gardener, and he's gone and interviewed some people because he wants to, So that's the thing about, there's a certain amount of sort of creativity and interest that comes to it as a storyteller. What do you want to do with it? And some people are both. They can be amazing storytellers and journalists at the same time. And they just become the most interesting people. They become the people that the star journalists that people want to be, and people follow, and people trust. So.
And they take their work and turn
Very
it
seriously.
into. I'm going to plug Jeff now into Amazon documentaries. He covered this case about a woman named Beverly Smith who was murdered in Raglan, and he followed that story for so long, and he wrote an ebook about it. And then Amazon contacted him and said, we want you to be a consultant, and we want to interview you for the documentary we're going to do on this case. And it was all due to the fact that he did all this legwork and all this great writing.
So my last question for you guys is to any writers here at St. Stephen's, what is your advice to them for any future job or career they may have?
It's too late.
No, it's. I think I said this before, but from where I sit, journalism is a noble profession. It's one that it's a part of our society that we need. We need people documenting our history, and there's traditional media, there's new media. We just need people to find a way to tell the stories. To me, we need more people to tell the stories that are happening in our neighborhoods, and we just don't have enough people to do that anymore where we are. One day, I'm hopeful we'll have more people again. But yeah, it's definitely worth getting. It's definitely worth pursuing. I don't have a bad day doing my job. There's other stuff about my job that I don't like, but I still love what I do today as much as I did when I first started.
I think the jury's out on what the future of journalism is, and even the future of writing, future of publishing. I think all of the industries have been upended in such a dramatic fashion that I think we're only at the beginning of what things could be. When the printing press happened in the 14th century with Gutenberg, when he brought in the printing press, nobody would have anticipated, right, that the result of that would have been the Protestant church, right, the Presbyterian church and the Baptist church. Nobody would have said that, everybody would, I'm just going to go to the seminary and be like a Catholic priest. Nobody knew that they would have been a job as a Protestant, vicar or whatever they are. Nobody would have anticipated that. So we don't really know what the jobs are on the other side of this, So the only advice that I would have is that don't monetize your passion. If you are interested in writing, then write. If you're interested in drawing, then draw. If you're interested in journalism because you've seen like on TV and you then be a journalist. Like be all the things that you want to be. And don't wait for somebody to pay you to be that person. Or to do that job or do that task. Just like if it's something that you want, because right now, like as our mate Joe Strummer says, the future is unwritten. The future has never been more unknown. We actually don't know what the other side of it is going to be like. So I don't know how to prepare anybody for the future, even including my own kids, except that I do think that there's a massive, infinite, massive opportunity for creativity, that you can become whatever, whoever, however you want to be, because now all of these tools which used to be exclusive to a certain group of people are all in your pocket. So you can that's the ultimate freedom to make your own future. So that's how I would see it.
Thank you so much, guys. Yeah. All right. Bye, Royal.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
you're very welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. That was great.
Do you end the stream? Okay. Thank you.
There we go.
Yep.